Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're going to continue this week on habits. As I mentioned before, habits are a critical part of our success, our happiness, our overall well-being. And so if we're able to understand habits a little more, we are in a better position to start both introducing life-affirming habits as well as breaking some of those old pesky habits that are not serving us any longer. Last week we talked about the habit loop, which every habit follows. Starts with a cue, which is a trigger for a behavior, and ends with a reward. And hopefully you've started to bring some awareness to, number one, your habits. Number two, what are some of the possible cues that are triggering the behavior? And number three, what are all of the possible rewards? Today, I want to share 3 things about your brain that are critical to understand in order to start changing those habits of yours. Number 1, your brain is set up to conserve energy. And there's a really important reason for that. Your brain makes up about 2% of your overall body weight, and yet it consumes 20% of your total energy in a day. That's astounding. And so what the brain tries to do is to conserve energy wherever possible. The first time you do something, if there's not a neural pathway existent for that particular behavior, for example, it lies down a neural pathway for that particular behavior. Every time you do that behavior again, that pathway strengthens. The stronger it is, the less energy it uses. And so your brain is kind of promoting the conservation of energy by the repetition of behaviors. And that's why about 50% of what you do in a day is actually a habit, because it's become a repetitive behavior that reduces the consumption of energy, your overall energy. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2, your brain cannot differentiate between good habits and non-serving habits. The only way it prioritizes them is by the number of times they're repeated, the number of times that they're repeated. So the more you do a habit, the more important your brain categorizes it. So if you're doing it consistently, your brain kind of says, well, it must be important. Neural pathway is strengthened and continues to be strengthened. The energy consumption is reduced and all seems well. Whether you've got a habit of exercising, great habit, life-affirming habit, your brain has no idea that that is a better habit than eating chips and cookies after dinner. No idea. So that's number 2. Number 3, when you start a new habit, it's supposed to feel a little off. When you're introducing a new habit, you kind of go through a process of, number 1, I really don't like doing this. This feels off. This is hard. It requires a lot of effort. 2, okay, this is getting a little easier, but it's still not automatic. It's still not something that I'm really looking forward to. And if you continue, it ends up being something that you really actually miss. If you stop doing it, you start missing it. So those are the 3 things that I want you to know. Recap. Number 1, your brain is set up to conserve energy. It does that by wanting you to do the repetitive behaviors because they consume less energy. Number 2, your brain cannot tell the difference between life-affirming habits and non-serving habits. Exercise, cookies and potato chips, it's all the same to them. It's all based on what you do most often. Number 3, a new habit is not supposed to be easy. I want everyone to stop blaming themselves or their willpower for not introducing a new habit effectively or getting rid of an old habit. It's brain science. It's not supposed to be easy. Absolutely possible, which is what we're going to cover in our next video. Next week, I'm giving you 3 tips for you to both introduce new habits and break old ones. And they're all scientifically based. Okay, have a great day. I'll see you next week. Bye. Bottoms up.